18. The honeyberry sour as a lime. One thing tropical fruits seem to specialize in is having more names than an exiled Russian count waiting tables at the Waldorf. An excellent example is the quenepa. Not that I'm certain who exactly uses that particular name. Browsing through an open Spanish market one morning, Susan and I came across a box filled with gray-green fruit about the size of small plums. Scribbled on its side was quenepas, an obvious find. Neither of us had ever heard of them, much less seen one before. Not wanting to display our ignorance, we bought a pound and scurried around the corner to eat them. We were hoping for some seeds, of course, but we got more than we bargained for this time. Peeling the leathery skin off a sample pear, we were left with a pit apiece. Nothing else to speak of, just a big pit. It was surrounded by a thin layer of what looked like corrugated jello. Obviously, the next step was to try to eat it somehow. I popped mine in my mouth and rolled it around experimentally. The flavor could be sucked off, but not much else. To boot, it was very puckery. Yum, I told Susan encouragingly. We walked around with companionably pursed lips for the rest of the afternoon. Still, the pits looked eminently plantable. Once home, I scrubbed off as much of the clinging flesh as I could with a toothbrush and warmish water. I put 4 seeds in a small closed container lined with the usual wet cheesecloth. Then I went to the botanical gardens in search of the identity of what we had just eaten and hopefully were about to grow on the windowsill. Nobody had heard of the quenepa. None of the books mentioned it. I was about to give up when I discovered a volume called A Dictionary of Plant Names by H.L. Garth van Wyk. The book had been published by Martinus Nijhoff at The Hague in 1916. Somewhat dated, it is still by far the best book I've found for correlating all the obscure popular names of tropical fruits with their equally obscure Latin names, the key to finding anything in botany books. For instance, a date palm is rarely listed as such, but you'll find a lot on Phoenix dactylifera. The quenepa, which Van Wyk spelled quenepe, turned out to be Melicocoa bijula. The quenepa's proper name was derived from the Greek meli, meaning honey, and kokos, meaning berry. The first half of it was all wrong. Either that or I was on a false scent. Further research using the key Latin name, even if this one was derived from the Greek, produced the fact that in some areas it was known as the Spanish lime. This, if not entirely accurate in my mind, certainly was coming closer to the gustatory reality. In another volume, it turned up as mamonchilo, a very popular fruit in Cuba and other Caribbean islands, where I was informed it is eaten out of hand or its seeds sometimes roasted like chestnuts. The nearest verbal equivalent to my quenepa outside of the dictionary was a Puerto Rican genipe. So I never did find out where the merchant we bought ours from got the name. As likely as not, it's known as a quenepa in the village where he was raised and nowhere else. My reading warned me that the Melicocoa bijuga, in all its various linguistic versions, or quenepa to me, was a slow-growing tree. In spite of this, it took only 6 weeks for the pits to germinate. Compared to the trials and tribulations I had with dates, this seemed like almost overnight. The effect is achieved directly contrary to my natural tendency by letting sleeping seeds lie. A watched seed never sprouts, etc. The most circumspect approach to a germination corner is to stroll by it with a casual, over-the-shoulder glance no more than once a week. Suddenly one day there is a shining white root breaking through some seed. You can't miss it. For after-dinner purposes, the quenepa is a very handy little plant, even if as a dessert it leaves something, mostly edible fruit, to be desired. It has no special soil requirements, and while it is an underachiever compared to the really prolific plants, it makes up for it in prettiness. The multiple leaves are bright chartreuse when they first come out on long winged stems. They will turn a deeper green. For the patient grower, there are further rewards. The quenepa will flower indoors after a number of years. The greenish-white flowers, though small, are very fragrant. While the fruit may not taste like honey, the fruit of some species is sweeter than that we were introduced to. The scent of the flowers came much closer to fulfilling the promise of the quenepa's technical name. Quenepas have even been known to bear fruit under glass, a properly botanical euphemism for after-dinner gardening in the north. However, if you have leanings in this direction, I'd recommend starting at least half a dozen trees at the same time. Some of the quenepas are bisexual, most are not, and you're not going to get anywhere with, say, 4 males or 4 females, which for some perverse reason is the way they usually sort out in groups of fewer than half a dozen. When I first started quenepa growing, I noticed the pattern of leaves looked vaguely familiar. Looking about my jungle, I spotted another set very like it, the lychee. Sure enough, the lychee and the quenepa turned out to be related. Also in the family are longans and the rambutan. These two I've not yet unearthed, but the ramifications for after-dinner gardening are obvious. There are new tastes to be cultivated all the time, and as the jet age reduces distances faster and faster, it seems inevitable that the most unheard of fruits will eventually all appear on the city dweller's table, and of course in his window gardens as well.